What's up? What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first ever live interview in this Facebook group. We're going to be doing these types of live interviews every single Friday right here in this group, and we'll be having on different guests each week to speak about everything to do with midterm rentals, rental arbitrage, co-hosting, and real estate in general. We already have some really great guests lined up for the next upcoming weeks, and we especially have an awesome guest lined up for today. So today we have Allen Duan here on the call, and Allen is a very experienced midterm rental operator. He's currently managing 25 midterm rentals, mostly in the Socal area. Allen, thank you so much for hopping on today. I appreciate you being here. And thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Christian. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, thanks. So, Allen, you've had quite a journey. I understand you started short-term rentals back in 2017. Would you mind just go ahead and share with us your journey and kind of how you've got to where you are so far and how you've gotten to where you are right now at 25 midterm rental units?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to share. I try to keep it from not getting too long, but essentially we got started doing short-term rental arbitrage here in SoCal, specifically near Disneyland. It was kind of an easy choice as far as the short-term rental demand all year round. It was great. 2017, so my friend and I got started, and essentially we got up to 13 units, all short-term rental in that same market. And long story short, with the pandemic, we basically were growing right up until early 2020. Pandemic hit. If any of you guys were doing, in this business at that time, you probably have similar experiences where cancellations, the type of guests we got totally changed. Booking values dropped, all of that. So 13 short-term rental arbitrage. We about less than a year into it, we tried to kind of ride it out, but then we had to move out all of them. And really around that time is when we started exploring midterm rentals, kind of accidentally, because we were finding properties and clients in cities that didn't allow short-term. So we figured, hey, let's just try it out, do 30-day plus. The term MTR wasn't really around yet, so I just thought of it as a long short-term rental stay, and also changing to this property management model, similar to co-hosting. If you guys are familiar with that, there's some slight differences, but moving away from arbitrage toward property management and MTRs because of the regulations. So since then, we kind of had like a rebirth post-COVID, got more clients, got more properties, and now we're around 25, 26, something like that. But yeah, that's kind of, in a nutshell, how, we transition from short-term to midterm, but also from arbitrage to property management. We do have a few arbitrage properties still. It's not our focus. We have 4 now, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And do you have, is there any particular reason that you've transitioned from arbitrage? Because I get why you would transition from short-term to midterm. That, to me, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Is there a reason in particular that you've switched primarily from arbitrage to this sort of property management?
Yeah. So I think a big part of it is unique to this market here in LA, SoCal. This is true for most places. The margin is going to be much less, right? With short-term compared to midterm. We find that, so we've had more MTR arbitrage properties than the 4 we have now, but we've moved out of them because it just wasn't really worth it. I've heard of other markets, and I'm kind of curious maybe for where you're at, Christian, where people talk about getting 3 to 4 times long-term rental rates as a midterm rental. In LA, if you could get double long-term rental rates, that's like the high end. Yeah. So you kind of imagine then after your expenses and utilities and all that margin is much smaller, and we just find that it's not really viable to scale midterm rental arbitrage here in this market, which is why that PM model is attractive for us.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So what I've seen in my experience is it seems like in high cost of living areas, arbitrage tends to be a lot less viable.
Sure. Yeah.
In places where like long-term rent are already so expensive, there's just not that much room to be able to like double or triple your rents. Whereas like I'm in Buffalo, New York, it's a much cheaper cost of living city. So like I still have apartments that I can rent for $1,000 a month or $1,200 a month.
Yeah.
And I can double those rents easily. I don't know about 3 or 4 times. That's
sure.
And maybe I've had specific cases where I've been able to do that, but not on a regular basis.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, for me, it's more like 1.5 to 2 times the monthly rent. But yeah, there's a few advantages to I think both sides between arbitrage and with like co-hosting. What I like a lot about arbitrage is that one, if you're good at negotiating rents, like I get often free rent concessions up front. So I'm often moving into places and getting the first 2 months rent free is typically.
Yeah.
So as you like kind of develop that skill set, you can negotiate free rents up front and discounted rents and things like that, especially when you're renting multiple apartments at one time, right? It gives you kind of that leverage. I also like with rental arbitrage, it kind of, I feel, gives me a little more control over the business. Whereas when you're doing the co-hosting and management side, you kind of have 2 customers.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
As a manager, because now you have the landlord who wants to be involved in some ways often, or you have to make sure that the landlord's happy, and then you also have the other side where you have to make sure that your guests are happy and having a good experience as well.
Yeah.
So what I like about arbitrage is that I really only have one customer. My landlords are not really involved in the day-to-day of the business whatsoever. I just pay them their rents, and I take care of the place, and they don't, they're not so involved. But with arbitrage, what I will say, what I don't like about it is that there's definitely more risk involved, because at the end of the day, I'm liable to make my rent payments at the end of every month.
Yeah.
I think my current rent liability right now is right around $40,000 a month.
Yeah.
So that's my nut. I gotta pay out, every month. It can be maybe a little bit more stressful in that way. There's like at the end of the month, you got to make sure you make all your rent payments. Whereas with co-hosting, in my experience, I have a couple co-hosting units that I co-host. Okay. I tend to make less on those units per month, but what's nice about them is that it's kind of risk-free.
Yeah.
And I really have no money in those deals. It's basically I make less money per month, but I don't have that risk at the end that I'm liable for that rent to pay at the end of the month.
No, you summarize the pros and cons perfectly there. That's exactly how I put it. You arbitrage you have, and really for anyone, it's like you have to decide what kind of business you want, right? Kind of what your risk tolerance and kind of how you would even like emotionally feel about that, right? Kind of like investing. So yeah, the big, like, are you okay with that big bill every first of the month? Or maybe some people like the client relations. Like there's a whole, with property management, there's so many, we have some clients who have multiple properties. For most cases, one client per property, right? So that's to grow, you have to start get a person or even grow a team eventually that handles that client satisfaction. Hey, my property's not making enough. Like, okay, here's what we're doing. So you just kind of pick your poison, right? Which one do you want?
Gotcha. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, because for me, I've got the 37 units active right now. I think I only have 7 or 8 landlords, with those 37 units, and I've got over 20 units that I have all with one landlord.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's great. But most of my portfolio is also, a large part of it are just studio apartments.
Got it.
So they're more affordable. Studio apartments in my target market tends to be more travel nurses, right?
Yeah.
which actually I'm curious, Alan. I'd like to ask, could you tell us a little bit about your portfolio and like what kind of properties you are managing? Are they larger properties or and kind of what do they look like?
Yeah, it really is a wide variety. So we have a couple of our arbitrage properties are one bedroom apartments.
Mhm.
We have a studio that's part of a triplex. That's a property man, it's a PM property. So studio, one bedroom units, up to, let's see, the largest we have quite a few 3 bedroom homes. We might have one 4 bedroom, like single family home. And then as far as the different like type of, there's like duplexes. I mentioned a triplex. There's condos, apartments. So really almost the whole range of what you could find in the LA market.
Wow,
Yeah.
very cool. Cool.
Yeah. I'm curious for you, Christian. So you mentioned you have mostly smaller units. I have found that here in my market, if I were to do more MTR arbitrage, I would lean toward those smaller units. Number one, mainly because the amount I can make on the smaller units it's pretty similar to the larger units, but obviously cheaper to furnish, cheaper rent, right? Is that what you're finding too?
Correct. Yeah, exactly that. Like I said, so in my portfolio, I've got about 20, I think 22 of them are studio
Okay.
apartments. And a lot of those studio apartments I'm able to furnish for between three and
Yeah.
$4,000. And then when you're getting the free rent up front,
Mm,
you get 2 months free rent up front. You spend $3,500 or $4,000 to get the studio, nicely well furnished.
yeah.
I can make most of my money back there in the first 2 months,
Yeah.
and then
Nice.
maybe I make the rest back over the next 2 months, and then after that, it's just straight cash flow.
Yeah.
So yeah, most of my arbitrage units are smaller, and then I do like most of my larger properties are actually co-hosting. So I
Makes
have
sense.
only one 4 bedroom property that I co-host, and then I've got a couple 3 and 2 bedrooms that I co-host, but I don't co-host any studios or any 1 bedrooms.
Got it.
So yeah, it's interesting, right? Where each one kind of makes sense. You have to just run the numbers and figure out
Yeah.
what model makes sense for each property and
Yep.
area, and for what also just for what you want, right, for your
Yeah.
business.
Exactly.
That's cool. So, Alan, I understand you are mostly in the Socal area, but you do run a couple properties remotely in other cities. Can
Yes.
you tell us a little bit about that process of managing, what it's like to manage properties remotely, and kind of how you've been able to build that out?
Yeah. So we have two out of state that we manage. One's in Las Vegas, one's in Richmond, Virginia. Those are they sound kind of random, and they are kind of random in the sense that these owners reached out to us, and at that time I was thinking, great, it's another another property but different market, and I said yes because I wanted to learn what it'll be like, right? Because you learn best by doing it, right? How to manage it far. And there
Right.
were things I learned from managing those two that actually apply to our properties here in SoCal, like just like having that mindset of, even though I'm here, I should treat the properties similarly as far as systems and teams and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So um, the this is kind of, most people know this probably already. Right away when you first go into a new market, you need your boots on the ground team, right? Cleaner, handyman are really the first two. I like to, so for both those markets, I have a handyman who's ideally, someone who's flexible, who's willing to kind of help with various random things, not just, repairs, kind of understands the business and like, awesome, hey, here's what I'm doing. Are you available for just kind of miscellaneous tasks? It's like what we call a runner, right? Can you
Yeah.
stop by and check on this? But essentially, you need someone there, right? Even if you aren't there, the owner of the business. What I would love to do, I am considering getting more in Las Vegas, not so much Virginia, but once you kind of, if I'm intentional about getting more there, then I'm going to establish more of a presence. I love this idea of finding like a key person who ideally maybe someone in that market who is interested in this business, wants to learn, partner together, right? and knows the area, has connections. And to me, that's a great way to go into another market. But remote management, man, when I first considered it, before we had those two, I thought it was like undoable. So doing those two kind of really helped me realize it is much more doable than I thought it was. I had kind of fears that I'm not realistic, but you never know, right? Till you try it. So it was a good experience for sure.
That's beautiful. So are you looking to take more properties on in those markets then?
Yeah. So Las Vegas is interesting. I've had a handful of people the past month, because they saw that I have one there, ask about, like, I guess they just assume, I'm looking for more clients there. So they're like, hey, I got a property in Las Vegas. Let's talk. I'm like, all right, cool. Let's talk. So from what I see on Furnish Finder, there's good demand, a lot of requests there. So I think that market, that's one I'm seriously considering intentionally growing in. There's a couple other markets where I've met potential like partners where I'm considering also going into. Once in Colorado, no properties there yet. I have kind of a key person there interested in working with us.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So I mean, for me, I feel it's so important to have the right team. Even here, I'm local. I'm in Buffalo. But for me, I still have that same
Exactly.
team, right? I have a property runner / maintenance person. I have my cleaning ladies. I've got my virtual assistant. Yep. So in a lot of ways, I feel that I am set up to start running properties remotely, and I'm not at all right now. I'm all in just Western New York area. Yep. I guess some of my concerns has just been like having to rebuild that team again. Yep. You know what I mean? Like you have to, every time you go to a new area, you have to rebuild that team. And I guess I've just been I like the idea of going deep and not wide, I guess. So almost half of my units are all within 3 blocks of one another. And they're all walking distance to the medical campus. So if I were to expand to other cities, I think I would do kind of like the same, or when I expand, because I do intend on doing it. When I do expand to other cities, my intention really is to do the same thing in other cities. So I think for me personally, rather than picking up, 2 units in Miami and picking up a couple units here, a couple of units there, when I do make that move to start managing more properties remote, I'd like to find one city that I like, and then, basically try to take over that city. So that's been kind of my, I guess what I've had in my mind. I don't know if it's right or wrong way or what.
I like that. That's exactly what I would do. I think oftentimes when someone's new, like if it's a co-host who's new, you'll see they have properties all over the place, and nothing wrong with it, right? When you started, you got to take what you got. But really, you're just saying yes to opportunities you have everywhere, right? But as you kind of hone your game and you know how to find a market that works, and I think especially like you just mentioned, like when I've never been good at the recruiting, hiring kind of piece, but as you do it over and over, you get better at it. So as you get better at that, I think the fear of like, I got to find another great cleaner, like knowing how to approach that the second time or whatever, it's easier than the first time, right? Like you have a stronger network, you can ask other hosts, right? People you trust. You don't have to test them all and find bad ones first. But I love the idea of going deep as well. Here in SoCal, one of the things we could do, I'm sure for you too, is when you talk to, let's say it's like the relocation people, right, for insurance bookings. I tell them that I have so many properties in one market, so that way my goal is that they think of me when they think of LA, right? Like I'm your LA solution, reach out to me. If I have 1 or 2 and they're always booked, then they won't come to me, right? That idea. And become an expert in that one area. So I think that's great.
That's the other piece of it too. Yeah. For me, it's like, I want to be the Buffalo guy, right? The go-to guy for my area. And then when I do expand, I want to become the go-to guy for that area as well. All right, cool. We have a couple people commenting, got in. All right, great. So, Alan, so with your co-hosting, could you tell us a little bit more about how does it work with, like, say I'm a landlord and I want to hire you as a property manager. Um, what are the next steps? How does it work? What is your, if you don't mind sharing, like, what is your revenue split look like? Could you share more details and as far as that goes?
Yeah. So we do property management. I'll share a little small difference. A lot of the co-hosting and property management, a lot of it's similar. And this is, I'm speaking from a California perspective. It might be true in other states too. But in California, in order to be a property manager, you have to have a broker's license or at least operate under one. So I don't have one, but I have someone else I operate underneath who has a broker's license. But the main differences there that the state cares about is if you collect rent, right, it comes into our business account, and then we pay our owners out. You have to be a property manager to handle those funds, right? As opposed to a co-host, the funds go to the owner of the property, and then you could invoice them as a co-host. Other piece is that when I create a lease for our tenants, I could put our business name as a landlord, right? Versus if you're a co-host, you can't put that there, right? So like if you rent an apartment for yourself from a big property management company, it's not the owner's name on there, it's the property management company's on there, right?
Got it.
But otherwise, services, sorry, I shook my table. Services are very similar, right? You're marketing the place, you're getting it booked, you're dealing with questions, all that's similar. So our property management fee for Mitchell Rentals is 15%. From a lot of people I've talked to, other Mitchell Rental managers, that's very typical. It's right between the long-term and the short-term kind of rental rates, right? Maybe 20-25% for short-term, maybe around 10 for long-term. Mm-hmm. And we design our services to be very similar to long-term property management because we find our clients understand that, right? And they kind of want the same level of passivity. So we have some owners who want to be more involved, who ask questions, but we have some owners who are super hands-off. They collect their statement each month, and they're happy, and they have busy lives, and that's what they want us, there for to manage their property. So it's if you guys have any experience with hiring a long-term property manager, it's a very similar process. We have a property management agreement. A lot of questions, our clients will ask us like, oh, how do you market the property? How do you screen the tenants? So being able to answer those questions, really thinking about the concerns of our target client, right? Oh, what is your typical vacancy rate? How do you keep that, the vacancy down and stuff like that? It's usually the first things we're talking about when we have a new potential client.
No, it's beautiful. Very cool. Well, I'm kind of out of questions at the moment. Guys, feel free to post in the comment section any questions you guys have for Alan or for me. We don't have any questions. We had to do a last minute audible. We were supposed to right off the bat. It was supposed to be right into the Facebook group, the live, but last minute we couldn't get it to work, so we ended up using StreamYard here. So I'm not sure if you're able to make comments or exactly, I see a few comments here, but I don't know exactly what it looks like on your guys' end, to be honest here. So let us know what questions you have for Alan. He's got a ton of experience, and he's killing it right now in Socal. All right, we have a question here. Can you talk more about how you split rent income with ownership when you're doing co-hosting?
Yeah, definitely. So it's really it's not a income split and as much as it's a management fee, right? So when I say 15%, let's say a property rents for $5,000, that's the gross rent, right? We charge the tenant, then 15% of that is $750. So $750 of that $5,000 will go to us. The rest of it goes to the owner. In this case, the owner, the owner furnishes the home. The owner has utilities under their name, so they have those bills as well. And we're just charging percentage of the rent we collect. Again, very similar to long-term property management.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think that differentiation that you made between co-hosting and property management is super key, because I honestly had them kind of conflated as the same thing, but there are some slight
I used to think
differences.
that too. Yeah, slight differences.
Yeah, there are some slight differences between that. So someone asked, do you do any renting by the room? And if so, how do you charge for that? And do you have any special rules for that?
Yeah, so I mean, we do have one property we manage that's rent by the room. It's relatively new to me, so I'm not super experienced with this model. It's near a university here in LA, so we talk to college students there, and we just started managing it last fall. So basically, it's almost been one school year, right? So, I mean, how you charge for it is similar to a whole home, right? You have to look at comps, figure out what the market rate is for rooms. When you have individual rooms, the main distinction is private bathroom or shared bathroom, right? That changes how much you could rent rooms for. And again, even with whole homes, you want to really figure out, is there demand? Let's say you have a given property, right? One thing I'll think about is there more demand for this property as a whole home, or is there more demand for this property by the room, right? Depending on your market, your type of tenants, right? And then that can help you decide what strategy to do. Special rules. It's great to have house rules, right, for the tenants. I like the one we have, the fact that it's called students, because automatically that helps them get along better, right? I don't really like the idea of doing, I mean, midterm or short term by the room when it's just all random people. I just feel like it's going to cause problems. You got to have something ready for that, or you don't want to get involved with that, right? So I prefer doing whole home. But we
Right. Yeah, managing the relationships between.
People get upset. Yeah. I've heard stories.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah, I personally don't do anything renting by the room. I have one property that I've really been considering it.
Okay.
I just haven't made that jump yet, and I think my biggest hurdle with that one is that it's a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, and I think for 3 people to be sharing 1 bedroom is, or excuse me, 1 bathroom is it might be a tough sell.
Yeah.
But I've had people ask if they could just rent a room. So it's something I've considered. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. We have someone asking, do you have a contract they sign? And if so, for how long? Oh, for your management.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a property management agreement. We took a standard long-term rental property management agreement and made some changes, or my lawyer helped me make changes. So it's very similar to that. But yes, we have a contract there. Our default term on there is 12 months to start off with. It's negotiable. Sometimes people want to try something shorter and see if they like working with us. We do have and again, all this is negotiable. So this is not the only way to do it. We have a 60-day, like if you want to cancel kind of situation. So it's not a big deal to us. Essentially, we set up our business in a way where so we have an onboarding fee, right? Because it's upfront work. Where if someone were to cancel after a few months in, it's not a huge loss to us. Of course, it's a loss of a client, but it's not a financial loss where we invested all this, upfront for them and then they just leave, right? So we want to have be ready for that situation.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense. So basically, it's typically a 12-month, but they have the option basically to cancel if it's not working out.
Most people will expect that these days.
Yeah, that's cool. And these are great questions, guys.
Yeah,
keep them coming. Yeah, these are really good questions. These are better than my questions. Can you share with us where you? Oh, this is a great question. Can you share with us where you get your rental clients? Are you listed on rental platforms?
Yes. So Airbnb and Furnish Finder have worked great for us. I would say 75% maybe of all our bookings come from those sites. The other big chunk really, so those are the best performing as far as just a site to list on and wait for bookings to come. And I'm sure you guys have heard about this in the MTR game. A lot of other ones are from relationship building, right? So as the common one is relocation specialists for the insurance bookings. So of course for some of them, you could add your properties to their databases, but over time, as I work with some of them, they reach out to me directly. They know I have properties in LA, like I mentioned earlier. So that is a great way as well. But again, if you're just starting out, if you have a few, definitely get on those two sites. A site like Zillow is super easy. Just put it on there. Some people often on there be confused, like, oh, this is furnished. I'm not used to that. But there are people who do look for furnished housing on Zillow, and again, very easy to list. So those are the three I would recommend starting with if you're trying to figure out where to list.
Yeah, for me, I have the same experience. Still, Airbnb is still for me my biggest source where I find midterm rental tenants. Obviously, just set it up with a 30-day minimum, and then I really create my Airbnb listings because Airbnb is such a big platform, right? I really create my listings to speak specifically to my avatar, my target market. I make it clear in my listings that it's like a property that's catered towards monthly stays. And I really, because my target market for most of my properties are travel nurses, I'm creating my listing to speak directly to the travel nurses.
That's great marketing. Yep. Know who your customer is.
Yep. Yeah, we're almost to the point where if you're just a regular person reading my listing, it just wouldn't even make sense. Or if you were looking for like a short-term stay reading my listing, it would be like, why is this guy keep talking about the hospital nearby? And you know what I mean? So Airbnb is still huge for me. Furnish Finder is good. And then besides that, it's referrals, recruiters, and realtors. That's the 3 R's for me. Which is all, it just boils down again to basically relationships.
Yep. Another.
Yeah. Next question. With co-hosting, are you only getting paid when the property is rented, or are you making a minimum per month regardless?
Yes, we only get paid when the property is rented. So this aligns our incentives with our owners, right? I have heard of long-term property management companies out there that have a lot of these extra fees, like a monthly fee, whether it's rented out or not. I prefer to make our fee structure simple, right? Simple to understand for our clients. So there's an onboarding fee one time, and then there's a management fee. But again, I want those incentives to align so our clients know we're doing everything we can to get rented out, for the most we can get it rented out for, right? So it's a win-win for both parties. And that's if you kind of think about what does the client also want, that makes sense for them, right? Just really knowing how to serve your customer best.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Someone offers, and I apologize, guys, because I'm using StreamYard. You guys are commenting on Facebook. I can't see your name, so I don't know.
You guys can add your name if you want into your question. That way,
if you add your name to the question, then I'll call you by name. But right now, everyone's comments just comes up under Facebook user. Yeah. Sorry. It's our first time doing this, so we'll improve as we go, man. I'm figuring it out as I go, right? That's typically how I do everything. I figure it out as I go. Someone's offering to co-host your property. They say, I'll co-host your property that you want to rent by the room since I have experience, not much experience, but some experience. Okay, thank you for the offer. Maybe Alan can reach out to you after the interview. All right, someone asks, what platforms are you using for rent split? Are you manually paying landlords out every month?
Oh, this is like our finances. Let's see. It depends on the booking source, right? So if it's Airbnb, you have the way you set the payments.
It automatically splits on Airbnb.
Yeah. So you can't set it that way. And again, there's not one way. So I remember seeing that. What we have, because we also have direct bookings and we use Stripe for our payment processor, we have ours. Almost feel like if we had a whiteboard easier here. All our payments, whether Airbnb or direct, will eventually go into. You know what? I'm trying to remember this properly because once you set it up, you kind of leave it there. So Airbnb will go into our bank account. Stripes will also go to our bank account. And when you do property management, there's something called trust accounting. You look that up. But essentially, when I collect that, let's say $5,000 rent up front, I can't put that in my own bank account because that's not mine yet, right? So all those property management properties, the rent goes into a trust account, and essentially from there you pay your owners out, and then you pay yourself out, your management fee, and that's when you actually take the money, and it's yours. Yeah, so whether you use Stripe or some other platform, I know some people use Baselane is another app. The app itself doesn't matter too much as long as you have that proper flow of how the money goes through and your like monthly kind of SOP for that.
Right. That makes sense. Someone asked, what kind of vacancy do you have between MTR stays?
Yeah, so our typically 70 to 80% occupancy is what I'm looking for. If it gets to 80% higher, I think it's doing great. The question here mentions this between MTR stays, and this is kind of a key thing that has been one of the bigger challenges for us. When you guys probably have some experiences. If you are in a market where you can't do short term, like we are here in LA, and you have to do 30-day plus, right? You got to manage these gaps, right? If you have a 2-3 gap between two stays, you lose those dates. You can't, you lose the value of those dates. So we've come up with a pricing strategy that kind of manages that and compensates kind of for those gaps essentially. So our pricing is not a flat monthly number for all dates essentially. And I'm happy to share more about that, and maybe something in the future because it's not that straightforward. But yeah, if you have these big gaps, if you have monthly bookings and the 2 weeks between every monthly booking, it's going to add up, right? And you're going to not make money that year. So that is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do have some variable pricing in that way too, where if we have a vacancy coming up, basically for me, the way that I've done it is that if we have vacancy coming up and I don't have an upcoming booking, I might offer some sort of discount on that first month to try to fill that vacancy.
Yeah.
So that we don't have exactly that 1 or 2 months vacant, because I'd rather be booked, and even if I'm breaking even that month, than to be
nothing.
To be completely vacant. And so that was something I kind of learned over this winter. This past winter for me was probably the toughest winter I've had. It was actually the first time this winter where I actually lost money on my arbitrage portfolio, and mostly due to vacancy. And so during that experience, I've kind of learned that, sometimes it's better to even, get your place filled and have, even if it's at maybe not exactly at the rate that you want, and have it discount, rather than to keep it vacant and to lose money.
Exactly.
Because for me this time at this winter, I think the mistake that I made was that I kept my rates too high for too long. Yeah. I was still, stuck on getting the same rates that I was getting in the summertime.
Yeah.
And I wanted them wanted those same rates for the winter. And I had people that reached out that were that wanted to stay, but they were they were trying to negotiate down the rents.
Sure.
And I didn't end up taking those. But looking back, I felt like, oh, you know what? Maybe I should have taken some of those discounted rates just to keep myself at least occupied during the winter time.
Yeah.
Especially for me being in a place like Buffalo, where our winters, we just have really rough winters. LA, you might not have that
sure.
quite the same amount of seasonality that we have. But I guess it turns out there's not that many people that want to come to Buffalo in the middle of February. So yeah, that's been my experience. But now it's already like April, May, June is already very, very booked. So it's looking good now. And I learned for next winter how to handle the slow season a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely. There's principles there from if you have any kind of short-term mental background with dynamic pricing, that's how we got started. And really, it's not the same, right? You can't just plug and play like Price Labs, but some of those principles are there, right? Knowing your seasonality, knowing what rents you expect to get for each time of the year, and changing your prices accordingly. Those valleys and peaks are not as, I guess, extreme, but they are there still. So that's definitely a piece to learn, that revenue management piece.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. I just did that as well versus losing money. Yep. I get 1 month inquiries, but don't accept them because I'm waiting for longer stays. What are your thoughts around that? Interesting. Alan, what do you think?
Yeah. So my first thought here is depends on when that 1 month inquiry is, right? Essentially, if I look at any one of our properties and I look at the current calendar and the current availability, every date range that someone might want to book to me has a different value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if someone checks out tomorrow, then someone checking in the day after that, we always have a 1 week buffer. 1 day buffer. If someone checks in the next following day, that's my ideal, right? So I'll price that a certain way. And also, if it's a longer stay, right, we like that, less vacancy. So to answer your question here, if someone, right now is April, so if someone wants to book 1 month in, let's say, July, and my property is vacant starting May, right? I'm like, ooh, that's going to, put a big block on the calendar. But if someone wants 1 month starting right after my current booking ends, no problem, right? Because it's essentially a continuation of when I have bookings. So it really comes down to when and how it's going to block. You mentioned wanting to wait for longer stays. So yeah, if they want to book 1 month right now, if it's vacant, to me that's not going to block anything, right? But this later on, then it'll definitely block things. You have to decide. One thing we do is if they want to pay a lot for it, like we'll price it really high for further out bookings, 1 month. If they want to pay like maybe double what I might want to get, I'm like, sure, I'll take that. I'll work with that, right? So you can play with pricing as well to handle that. Or you could just say no outright if that's a rule you have for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing, if someone's reaching out for months ahead and in advance, a lot of times I end up just telling reach back out
Sure.
when it gets closer.
Yeah.
Because, I wouldn't be willing, right now we're in April, I wouldn't really be willing to block, take a 1 month booking in the middle of August. It just because it would really just screw up my calendar in that way. But if I have a place that's vacant today and they want to rent for only 1 month, then yeah, of course, 100%. And with those 1 month bookings, a lot of times they end up extending anyways. Sure, especially on Airbnb, I find that people tend to extend more. They often, because I have a 30-night minimum on my Airbnb listings, 31 night. I find that a lot of people will book 31 nights, and then as we get closer, they'll request to extend.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, it's been a pleasure. It's currently 1:45 p.m., so we're just about to call this interview a wrap. Thank you so much for being our first guest ever. I think you did really well. I really appreciate you being on this call. Thank you guys all for watching and being a part and asking all of these amazing questions. These questions were really awesome. So thank you guys for participating and being a part of it. If you want to continue to learn more, please continue to participate in the Facebook group. And I have also just launched my personal coaching program for you to learn more. It's only $150 a month right now. It's still in its beta. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to reach out to me about that. But besides that, guys, have a great rest of your day and take care. Peace. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Christian. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure.